Well, undeniably, yes. All the indicators are there, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's geoeconomics, whether it's simply the sordid business of trade and commerce, even before we get to investment flows and the future of innovation. And that's simply because the locus of economic activity for the next 50 years shifts incrementally to the Asia-Pacific region. And therefore, the challenge for all in Europe, and for that matter in the United States, is to understand what is unfolding in Asia beyond a level of simple cliche, but frankly to get down to useful granularity. And that, I think, needs to happen soon. I believe it's important for European leaders, and the same for the government of the United States, is to understand the world is viewed from Beijing. The beginning of wisdom in international relations is to understand how the other person thinks. And whereas that has become commonplace in the traditional European diplomacies, England, France, Prussia, Germany, etc., I think it is less practiced when it comes to understanding deeply the worldview of countries like China, who will occupy a very large space in the first half of this 21st century. So understanding the world as viewed from Beijing's perspective is the beginning of wisdom. Whether you then choose to agree or disagree with it is a separate matter, but at least you extend the element of respect, which is, I know, in fact, your locus standi, and then move on to engage on the basis of it, rather than simply engage in reverse projectionism, which is, these Chinese folks must just be like us, must be thinking exactly the same way because they're all in pursuit of rational self-interest as we would rationally define it in the West. Well, there's an overlap there, but it ain't neat. Well, I'm already on record as saying I genuinely loathe the acronym OBOR, because to me it sounds like a Death Star from somewhere between Mars and Venus, or perhaps beyond our own galaxy. Leave that to one side. One Belt and One Road as a concept I don't have any particular problem with. Why? Just taking a global perspective, if you look at the aggregate investment needs of this very unstable part of the world, frankly from the Chinese Far West through Central Asia to the Middle East, and into parts of Central and Eastern Europe. If we're going to acquire serious investment in building infrastructure, I don't particularly care where it comes from. It's either from China or at this stage probably nowhere. I think the second fact is this. Our Chinese friends are going to rapidly discover that there is a huge complexity involved in this, as any global power has experienced over the centuries throughout the history of great powers and global powers. And there will be a lot of lessons learned in terms of country risk, in terms of project management, in terms of geopolitics, in areas far removed from the traditional purview of the Middle Kingdom. Well, of course, I'm immensely challenged when I come here to the Oxford China Centre, because now with the advent of Trump, we're into bigism. I see that, in fact, your China Centre physically looks a bit bigger than our China Centre in Australia, so I'm deeply envious. Seriously, though, the challenge is this. China has long been a great power. It is only now, for the first time in its history, that it is becoming a global power. This is quite a different matter. And therefore, this is a fundamental new challenge to analysis. And therefore, the Academy has a deep role in working with policymakers and understanding the nature of China's global engagement, what drives it, how big are the factors which are domestic, what are they, and what is its future trajectory. Therefore, there is a great need for centres like yours at Oxford, ours in Canberra, and emerging centres like those in Berlin, together with traditional centres in the United States, to collaborate. This is a big subject. It is multidimensional. Suddenly, in any given Chinese action in the world, we're looking at this aggregation of Chinese philosophy, sociology, its historical experience of the West and its neighbours, raw economics, political science, the dynamics of the Chinese Communist Party, all wrapped into one, which we now call global China, with a bit of climate change wrapped up the middle. And so therefore, this is, I think, and what I describe as the new sinology, it is a new discipline that's required, which is integrated in a manner which has hitherto not been necessary. The study of China historically, as you know, as a sinologist yourself, has been comfortably boxed within the silos, not just between classical Chinese and modern Chinese, but within, shall we say, the known disciplines and sub-disciplines. Frankly, what policymakers now need is integrated analysis. And they need to know what's driving a particular Chinese position in order to intelligently engage it. So hence my response to your question is now the need is greater than ever. So wisdom has to be had by those who run such centres, but wisdom also needs to be had by governments in how to work with such centres. You know, the beginning of wisdom in foreign policy is never to provide public advice to another government, so I rarely do so. So let me just reflect on a principle or two. Whether it applies to your circumstances or not is a matter for you. I think when you've embarked upon a radical new course of direction, as Britain has just done, it's important rapidly to reconstitute the fundamentals about what this nation is about and what it now seeks to do in the world, and to encapsulate that into some core narrative which is comprehensible by the rest of the world. That, I believe, is a matter of some urgency here in the United Kingdom. And secondly, rather than anti-Brexiteers simply drowning in their cups, I think it might be useful to actually, in the balance sheet, determine fairly quickly what extraordinary assets Britain still has in the world, and to maximise those assets. Of course, one of those assets is its world-leading universities and those centres of academic excellence as being the natural magnets for global student populations, in which case nothing should be done to impede that as well.